Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever noticed how the moment you stop trying, suddenly they start to notice you again? It's strange, isn't it? The moment you stop chasing, stop begging for their attention, stop overextending yourself just to be seen, that's when they start to wonder where you went. But this isn't about making them miss you. This is about something far more powerful. Because the real magic happens when you stop fighting to be chosen and finally remember that the one person who was supposed to choose you all along was you. And you've probably been there before, that confusing, gut-wrenching moment when someone you care about starts to pull away. They stop calling, stop texting, stop making plans, and suddenly all that warmth and energy that once flowed between you feels like it's vanished overnight. You tell yourself it's just a phase, that maybe they're busy or stressed or going through something, but deep down, you can feel it. They've stopped trying, and that realization cuts deep because it forces you to face a truth you don't want to see. The connection you once shared is no longer being nurtured by both sides, and it's tempting in that moment to panic, to chase, to send one more message, make one more call, or try to fix whatever went wrong. You tell yourself, if I just show them how much I care, maybe they'll come back. But what actually happens when you do that? You start moving from your power into their shadow. You stop being the grounded, confident version of yourself and turn into someone desperate for validation from a person who isn't even meeting you halfway. And that's where the shift needs to happen. Because chasing someone who's stopped trying doesn't bring them back. It only teaches them that they can stop trying and still keep you. When you reward someone's inconsistency with effort, you reinforce their complacency. You teach them that your love, your time, and your attention are unconditional, even when they give you nothing in return. But real connection doesn't grow from one person doing all the work. It grows from reciprocity, from mutual energy, from two people who both want to show up. And so instead of chasing, pause. Take a breath. Ask yourself this question. What am I trying to prove? Are you trying to prove that you're worthy of being chosen? Are you trying to prove that you're good enough to be loved by someone who stopped showing you care? The truth is, you never have to prove your value to someone who genuinely sees it. When someone truly recognizes your worth, they don't need reminders. They show up. And the moment you stop chasing is the moment you start reclaiming your energy. You stop pouring into someone else's cup and begin refilling your own. You start redirecting your focus from how do I make them care again to how do I take care of myself again? Because your worth doesn't disappear when someone stops trying. It only becomes hidden beneath the layers of your own fear and self-doubt. And here's what you do instead. Create space. Space for them to notice your absence, yes, but more importantly, space for you to rediscover yourself. Because when you've been chasing, you've likely lost pieces of who you are along the way. You've molded yourself to fit what they wanted instead of standing firm in what you deserve. Space allows you to remember that your happiness doesn't depend on their attention. It comes from within, from your own ability to nurture your life with meaning, purpose, and self-respect. And when you stop chasing, you communicate something powerful without saying a word. You say, I respect myself too much to keep fighting for someone who stopped fighting for me. You say, I know what I bring to the table, and if you can't meet me there, I'll eat alone. Now, that quiet confidence, that strength of self is magnetic. People feel it. It's not a performance, it's an energy shift. Because when you stop trying to control someone else's behavior, you start mastering your own. But I know letting go of the chase doesn't mean you stop caring. It just means you stop bleeding for someone who isn't even reaching for a bandage. It means you choose peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, and dignity over desperation. It's not easy. Every part of you will want to reach out, to fix it, to explain yourself one more time. But every time you resist that impulse, you build emotional strength. You remind yourself that your value doesn't come from who stays. It comes from how you stay true to yourself. And you might be thinking, but what if they come back? And they might. People often realize what they've lost when they feel the weight of your absence. But when they do, you'll be in a different place. You won't be waiting by the phone. You'll be centered. You'll be grounded. You'll be asking yourself not, do they want me back, but do they deserve a place in my life now? That's what emotional evolution looks like, moving from seeking validation to exercising discernment. And then here's something most people don't tell you. Sometimes their distance isn't about you at all. Sometimes people stop trying because they're confused, insecure, or emotionally unavailable. Sometimes they stop trying because they've gotten too comfortable or too afraid to confront their own feelings. Whatever their reason, it's not your job to drag them back into the connection. You can invite someone into your world, but you can't force them to stay. And the moment you stop trying to control what isn't yours to control, you set yourself free. And so focus on becoming the kind of person who doesn't chase, not because you don't care, but because you trust. You trust that what's meant for you won't require you to beg for attention or compromise your dignity. You trust that your love doesn't vanish when effort fades for a moment, but if it does, you trust yourself enough to walk away. And the most attractive thing in the world is a person who knows how to let go. Not in anger, not in bitterness, but in quiet confidence. A person who says, I wish you well, but I'm not waiting for you to decide I'm enough. That's not coldness. That's self-respect in motion. And when you move like that, the world responds differently to you. You start drawing people who value consistency, communication, and effort. You start attracting energy that matches your own. And while they're busy wondering if they should reach out, you'll be busy building a life so full that you don't have time to wonder anymore. You'll be investing in your passions, your friendships, your growth. You'll be living with intention. And ironically, that's when people who once stopped trying often come running back, not because of the words you said, but because of the energy you now radiate. They see the glow of someone who finally remembered their worth. But whether they return or not doesn't matter anymore, because by then you'll have realized something powerful. You don't need anyone to validate your value. You've stopped chasing love and started embodying it. You've become the person who doesn't wait for effort, but inspires it, not through need, but through presence. And that kind of presence can't be faked. It's born from the moment you decided to stop chasing what's fading and start investing in what's real yourself. And because that's the moment everything begins to change, when you stop chasing someone who stopped trying, you start attracting the life that's waiting for you beyond them. You begin to realize how much mental space they've occupied, how many days you've spent analyzing every text, every silence, every shift in tone, trying to decode what went wrong. You start to see how much of your energy was spent trying to be enough for someone who never saw the depth of what you were giving. And when that realization hits, it's both painful and liberating. Painful because it forces you to face the truth of what you were settling for. Liberating because it shows you that you've been the one holding the power all along. And when someone stops trying, it's not your cue to chase. It's your cue to evolve. It's your invitation to rise above the old version of yourself that believed you had to earn love through effort. You were never supposed to beg for attention. You were supposed to be met halfway. You were never supposed to convince someone to see your worth. You were supposed to walk beside someone who already did. And once you understand that, everything changes about the way you show up in your relationships. And you stop being afraid of losing people because you realize that losing someone who doesn't value you isn't a loss at all. It's a clearing. It's space being made for something better, something healthier, something that doesn't drain the life out of you. And that shift is powerful because when you stop being afraid of loss, you stop clinging. When you stop clinging, you stop settling. And when you stop settling, you finally start attracting the kind of love that feels safe, steady and mutual. But let's be honest, this isn't easy. It takes courage to stand still when every fiber of your body wants to reach out. It takes discipline to resist the urge to chase what's walking away. It takes self-respect to hold your silence when you know one text could reopen the door, even if that door only leads back to pain. But this is how strength is built, one decision at a time, in those quiet moments when no one's watching. Strength isn't about pretending you don't care. It's about caring enough about yourself to not betray your own peace. And so what do you do instead of chasing? You shift your focus inward. You start nurturing the parts of yourself that you abandoned when you made someone else the center of your world. You start doing the things that light you up again, the hobbies you forgot about, the friends you stopped calling, the goals you put on hold while waiting for their attention. Because every time you invest in yourself, you remind your heart that it doesn't need permission to feel full. And something magical happens when you do that. The energy you used to waste worrying about them starts flowing into your own life. You start to glow again. You laugh more freely. You move with more purpose. You speak with more confidence. You begin to remember who you were before the overthinking, before the second guessing, before you tied your self-worth to someone's inconsistent affection. And the best part, that version of you isn't gone. It's been waiting for you to stop chasing someone else so you could finally come home to yourself. And when you stop chasing, you send a message not just to the world, but to your own soul. You say, I trust myself enough to let go of what's not choosing me. You say, I believe that the right connection won't make me question my worth every other day. You begin to understand that love isn't supposed to feel like a test you have to pass. It's supposed to feel like a place you can rest. And as you grow into that mindset, you'll notice how your standards evolve. You'll stop being impressed by grand gestures that come after long periods of silence. You'll stop confusing mixed signals with mystery. You'll stop accepting crumbs when you know you deserve the whole table. You'll start valuing peace over drama, clarity over chaos, and consistency over chemistry. Because you've learned that what keeps love alive isn't intensity, it's intention. And you'll also realize that you can't teach someone effort. You can communicate your needs, you can express your boundaries, but you cannot create desire in someone who isn't willing to show up. Love is a two-player game. If you're the only one trying to score, it's not love, it's labor. And labor without reciprocity leads to resentment. That's why stepping back isn't an act of giving up. It's an act of self-preservation. And the moment you stop chasing, you become the mirror that shows others what effort looks like. You teach people how to treat you not by your words, but by your absence when you're not being valued. You show them that access to you is a privilege, not a guarantee, that your energy is sacred and it's not available to those who only remember your worth when it's convenient for them. And ironically, it's often in that moment when you've detached that people finally wake up. They start to wonder where you went, why your energy feels different, why the dynamic has shifted. But by then you'll be too busy thriving to notice. And you'll find that chasing was never about love. It was about fear. Fear of being forgotten, fear of being replaced, fear of being alone. But when you confront those fears head on, you realize something profound. Being alone isn't the enemy. Being misunderstood while in the wrong connection is. Because loneliness in peace is still better than attachment in pain. When you stop fearing solitude, you stop tolerating situations that require you to beg for belonging. And in time, you'll look back at the version of yourself that used to chase and feel nothing but compassion. Because they didn't know better. They just wanted to be loved, seen, understood. But now you'll know that love isn't something you have to run after. It's something you attract by being authentic. You'll know that the right person doesn't need to be convinced to stay. They'll stay because they see your value clearly and choose it every day. And then the most beautiful part of this transformation is that it doesn't just change your relationships. It changes your energy in every area of your life. When you stop chasing people, you start attracting opportunities. You start walking into rooms differently, no longer asking, will they like me? But instead, do I even like them? You stop trying to fit into places that don't match your frequency. You stop dimming your light to make others comfortable. You begin to radiate self-respect, and that energy becomes your shield. And it's in this new energy that you'll find freedom. Freedom from the anxiety of waiting for texts that never come. Freedom from replaying conversations in your head. Freedom from trying to read between the lines of someone who doesn't even speak your emotional language. You'll stop being addicted to potential and start being devoted to reality. Because potential is what you see in someone else. Reality is what you choose for yourself. And you'll learn that the right person won't make you chase. They'll make you feel chosen. The right relationship won't require you to lose yourself to keep it. It will invite you to become more of who you are. And the right love won't feel like an emotional roller coaster. It will feel like a deep breath after a long storm. But you only get there when you stop running after what's fading and start standing still long enough to see what's real. And so don't chase someone who's stopped trying. Don't beg for a seat at a table where you were never truly valued. You have too much to offer to be treated like an option. Let them pull away if that's what they need to do, and you pull forward into your own life. Let their silence be the closure you didn't want but probably needed, because sometimes the way someone stops showing up for you is the universe's way of making space for someone who will. And when that day comes, when you meet the person who doesn't make you question your worth, you'll thank yourself for walking away from the one who did. You'll realize that the peace you feel now was never found in chasing someone else. It was born the moment you decided to choose yourself. And because choosing yourself isn't just an act of self-love, it's an act of self-respect. It's the moment you finally say, I'm done negotiating my value for temporary attention. It's when you stop asking for clarity from people who thrive on confusion. It's when you stop explaining your worth to people who have already decided to overlook it. Choosing yourself means reclaiming all the energy you've been spending on trying to make someone care and using it to build a life that feels full, even without them in it. And then once you do that, something shifts inside you. You stop waking up with that heavy feeling in your chest. You stop checking your phone every few minutes, hoping to see their name pop up. You stop replaying the same moments in your mind, wondering what you could have done differently. Instead, you start to feel lighter. You start to remember what it feels like to be in control of your own happiness again. You start to live instead of waiting for someone to notice you living. And because the truth is, people can feel when you're waiting. They can feel when your energy revolves around them, when your confidence depends on their attention, when your day brightens or dims based on their effort. But they can also feel when you no longer need that validation, when you've detached from the outcome, when you're genuinely okay whether they come closer or drift away. That kind of energy is powerful. It communicates strength without words, and people can't help but respect it, even if they never say it out loud. And it's not about pretending you don't care. It's about shifting your care inward. You care deeply, but now your care is focused on your own growth, your own peace, your own evolution. You're no longer trying to control someone else's choices. You're mastering your own. You're learning that your boundaries are not walls, they're filters that protect your energy from being misused. You're learning that it's not your job to convince anyone to your worth. It's your job to live in a way that reflects it. And you start to realize that when someone stops trying, it's not always rejection, it's redirection. The universe is clearing space for something more aligned. Sometimes the person you wanted isn't capable of loving at the depth you require. Sometimes they're not meant to walk the same path as you. And sometimes their exit is the lesson you needed to remember how powerful it is to choose yourself. The end of one connection isn't the end of love. It's just the closing of a chapter that was never meant to last forever. And when you stop chasing, you start seeing things clearly. You start noticing who truly reciprocates your effort and who only responds when it's convenient. You see who values your presence and who only reacts to your absence. You realize how many times you gave chances disguised as compassion, how many times you mistook inconsistency for mystery, how many times you tried to decode mixed signals instead of accepting the silence that followed them. And in that awareness, you stop blaming yourself. You stop asking, why wasn't I enough? And start saying, they weren't ready for someone like me. And because your kindness, your loyalty, your effort, they're not weaknesses, they're gifts. The problem isn't that you give too much, it's that you keep giving to people who take without returning. When you finally direct that same energy into yourself, you become unstoppable. You start showing up in the world differently. You no longer chase, you attract. You no longer beg, you inspire. You no longer settle, you choose. And And that's when your confidence becomes unshakable, not because life gets easier, but because you've learned to stay centered no matter what happens. You've learned that rejection doesn't define you, that silence isn't a reflection of your worth, that distance doesn't mean you've lost anything. You begin to realize that peace is a choice. You can choose peace even when others choose confusion. You can choose dignity even when others choose avoidance. You can choose growth even when others choose comfort. And as you walk through this process, there will be moments when your heart aches. You'll have days when you miss them, when you question if you did the right thing, when you feel the pull to reach out again. But those moments are just the remnants of old habits, the emotional echoes of a version of you that needed their validation to feel safe. Don't let those moments pull you back. Let them remind you of how far you've come. Let them remind you that missing someone doesn't mean you should go back to them. You can miss a person and still know they're not meant for your future. And eventually the pain fades. It always does. What replaces it is strength, the kind that can't be taken from you again. You start setting higher standards, not out of bitterness, but out of self-awareness. You begin to see relationships differently. You no longer want someone who just makes your heart race. You want someone who makes your soul rest. You want effort without being asked, communication without confusion, love without conditions. And because you've stopped chasing, you're now in the right place to receive it. And that's the beautiful irony. When you stop chasing what's not right, what is right starts to find you. The energy you used to waste trying to force connections now draws the right people toward you effortlessly. You'll attract friendships that nourish you, opportunities that excite you, love that feels easy, not because life suddenly became perfect, but because you became aligned with what you deserve. And you'll also realize that what used to attract you no longer does. The people who once kept you guessing now bore you. The ones who play games no longer thrill you. You've outgrown the need for chaos because you've learned that peace is far more intoxicating. Then you crave stability, transparency, and effort. And you refuse to settle for less. You no longer chase excitement born of uncertainty. You crave connection built on consistency. And then in this space, you become magnetic, not because you're trying to be, but because you embody something rare, calm confidence. You're not moved by attention, you're moved by intention. You're not seeking validation, you're offering authenticity. You've learned that your time and energy are precious currencies and you spend them wisely. You understand now that love should add to your life, not take from it. And the truth is, you never really lose people, you outgrow them. You outgrow needing their approval, their validation, their effort. You outgrow the version of yourself that once believed love meant holding on no matter what. You start to understand that real love isn't proven through chasing, it's proven through mutual presence. When both people show up fully, love flourishes. When only one does, it withers. And then when you look back, you'll see that everything you went through was preparing you for this version of yourself. The heartbreaks, the disappointments, the moments of silence, all of it was shaping you into someone who finally understands that peace is more valuable than being chosen by the wrong person. Every unanswered text, every ghosted moment, every time someone stopped trying, it was all pointing you back to yourself. And you'll notice that the more you live in alignment with your worth, the more naturally love flows to you, because love that's right for you doesn't require you to chase. It meets you where you are. It recognizes your effort. It respects your boundaries. It grows through communication and consistency. That's the kind of love that feels safe, that nourishes rather than drains, that builds rather than breaks. And then when that kind of love arrives, you'll be ready, not because you waited, but because you grew. You'll receive it with grace, not desperation. You'll appreciate it deeply, but you'll also know you'd still be whole without it. Because that's the greatest transformation of all, realizing that love is beautiful, but it's not the source of your worth. You are. And you've known that since the day you stopped chasing and started choosing yourself. And because when you start choosing yourself consistently, you begin to operate from a place of power, not from a place of fear. You no longer wait for people to tell you that you matter. You already know you do. You no longer shrink yourself hoping to be accepted. You stand tall knowing that the right people will meet you at your height. You no longer interpret someone's lack of effort as a reflection of your worth. You see it as evidence of their own limitations. You stop internalizing someone's emotional unavailability and start realizing it has nothing to do with you. That's freedom. That's emotional maturity. That's growth. And it's not that you become cold or detached. You still love deeply. You still care genuinely, but you do it differently now. You love without losing yourself. You care without overextending. You show up fully, but only where there's mutual effort. You stop trying to convince people to match your energy. You simply stop giving it to those who don't. And that shift transforms everything, because suddenly you're no longer exhausted from giving too much. You're no longer drained from chasing after validation. You're finally at peace in your own presence. And you start to see that the real glow up isn't about looking better. It's about feeling better. It's about walking through life with a quiet confidence that says, I know who I am and I'm proud of it. You no longer second guess your worth just because someone doesn't appreciate it. You no longer need constant reassurance because your validation comes from within. You no longer fear being alone because you've made peace with your own company. And that's when you become truly magnetic, because nothing is more attractive than someone who is content in their own skin and unafraid to walk away from anything that doesn't align with their peace. And you'll notice how your standards naturally rise, not because you've become arrogant, but because you've finally become aware. You've seen what happens when you settle for less. You lose parts of yourself trying to hold on to something that was never meant to stay. You've learned that chemistry without consistency isn't enough. You've learned that words without action are empty. You've learned that love without effort is just illusion. So now you want something real. You crave depth over drama, honesty over mystery, substance over surface. You don't want someone who only shows up when it's easy. You want someone who chooses you when it's hard. And when you carry that mindset, the world starts responding to you differently. You stop attracting the same cycles because you've broken the pattern within yourself. You stop falling for potential and start requiring presence. You stop accepting half love disguised as almost enough. You begin to realize that the energy you bring into your life mirrors the energy you hold within yourself. When you move with clarity, you attract clarity. When you stand in self-respect, you attract respect. When you honor your own heart, you attract people who know how to do the same. And sometimes people will try to come back, not because they've changed, but because they feel your growth. They sense the shift in your energy. They realize they no longer have the same hold over you, and that realization unsettles them. But by that time, you won't be moved by apologies that come too late. You'll understand that closure doesn't come from someone's explanation. It comes from your decision to move forward without one. You'll listen to their words, but you'll look at their pattern. Because growth has taught you that consistency is louder than promises. And then that's when you truly understand the power of silence. The same silence that once scared you becomes your greatest strength. You no longer fill the gaps with over-explanations or desperate messages. You let the silence speak for you. You let your absence communicate what your presence once tolerated. Because your silence now says everything your words no longer need to. It says, I'm not angry, I'm just done repeating myself. It says, I'm not chasing anyone who's not meeting me halfway. It says, I've learned that my peace is worth more than being understood by someone who never listened in the first place. And when you operate from that space, you begin to feel light again. You stop needing closure because you realize the situation itself was the closure. You stop needing answers because you've accepted that some questions don't deserve the weight of your energy anymore. You stop replaying the past because you've made peace with it. It happened, it taught you, and now it's behind you. The chapter has closed and you've walked out stronger. And you start embracing solitude in a new way. Instead of fearing it, you begin to cherish it. You find joy in your own rhythm, waking up with clarity, moving through your day with purpose, ending your night with gratitude. You fill your life with things that make you come alive, not things that make you anxious. You surround yourself with people who inspire you, who bring peace instead of pressure, who add energy instead of taking it away. You realize that relationships, romantic or not, should be a complement to your happiness, not the source of it. And as you build this new version of yourself, you'll have moments when you look back, not with pain, but with gratitude, because the person who stopped trying taught you something you couldn't have learned any other way. They showed you the cost of chasing. They revealed the parts of you that needed healing. They forced you to turn inward and find strength you didn't know you had. They were the mirror that reflected your growth. Without that experience, you might never have learned what self-worth truly feels like. And you begin to see love differently now. It's no longer about intensity or obsession. It's about peace, presence, and partnership. It's not about who can give you butterflies. It's about who can give you balance. You want a connection that doesn't drain you but grounds you. Someone who doesn't make you question your place but affirms it. Someone who doesn't just talk about effort but lives it. You realize that love isn't supposed to feel like chasing a moving target. It's supposed to feel like walking side by side. And then because you've done the work, you now recognize your worth without needing anyone to validate it. You don't settle for inconsistent effort disguised as passion. You don't get swept up by someone's potential. You no longer romanticize inconsistency or justify poor treatment. You hold people accountable, not out of bitterness, but because you finally understand the standard of love you deserve. You love yourself enough to wait for what's real. And you also start to lead differently in all areas of your life. The confidence you built from choosing yourself spills into your career, your friendships, your goals. You stop doubting whether you're capable and start moving with purpose. You stop waiting for permission and start taking initiative. You stop playing small to make others comfortable and start living in the fullness of your potential. That's what happens when you stop chasing people. You start chasing your purpose. And it's ironic because the same people who once overlooked you will begin to notice your growth. They'll see your light, your peace, your success, and they'll wonder how you did it. But you'll know the truth. It started the day you stopped running after those who stopped trying, the day you chose peace over confusion, the day you stopped asking for effort and decided to mirror it instead.